And this is kind of where we fell out. Everyone expressed a concern over improvements in compensation. Now, it was interesting, to me anyway, that was seen in a variety of different ways and of different concerns. Some were with pay raises, and as we kind of discussed, we see that as different from the pay scales. Other was alignment with the appropriate pay scale steps as published by the county, and then the third was affordable health care. This has been a big issue among me and my colleagues now. The health care plan we have is devastating. It's a high deductible plan, and it's very difficult to work with. My wife had to go to the ER for 2 hours, and we got a bill for $2,700, just over $2,700, and that's my out-of-pocket cost. So,
Mr. Honeycutt,
yes.
I do want to bring your attention to the school board decided to go the self-funding route and pull away from the plan that we're on. So it makes a big difference when you have high claims.
As you say, and all these concerns have been expressed to the school board, and that was done a few weeks ago. Again, as we kind of all agreed that you give the pot and the school board spends the pot, and we're kind of moving forward on that. That was a decision made by the school board, and we recognize that, but it has had a financial impact on teachers, which is my purpose here to represent. So. In the survey, this to me is probably one of the most important things. The harsh reality of teaching: 56% of respondents work second jobs outside of the school system and/or take on extra paid duties within the school system to make ends meet each month. This is not fun money; it's money to keep the power on. My wife and I both work for Bedford County Schools. She's a 5th grade teacher, and I'm an aide. Hopefully, within a year, I'll be a teacher, and we'll get a nice bump in pay there. But it's necessary for us as school employees to have that second income. So I work really 2 extra jobs on top of my full-time schedule at Thomas Jefferson, on top of being a full-time student at a university. How we value education in Bedford County. And we can all, I think we've kind of established that the school board makes the decisions on how they're going to implement the funds they have for education. Based on the Virginia Department of Education Superintendent Report comparing 9 counties and municipalities with local composite index of 0.4009 to 0.4110, these were the counties that were included in this comparison. All of them fell in that range. Bedford County's composite index represents local ability to pay. As of March 2014 was 0.4110. The average LCI of comparable cities and counties was below that, 0.4069. Bedford County ranked last in per pupil spending $1,021 less on each student than the average of the other counties and cities with a similar ability to pay. This, to me and to my colleagues, kind of represents a problem, that we are not funding education at the level that it needs to be funded at in this county.
Mr. Honeycutt.
Yes.
The source of that LCI of 0.4110 for the Bedford County LCI, where'd you get that number?
It's the Virginia Department of Education Superintendent's Report, and I'd be happy to, I can email you a copy of it after the presentation.
Mr. Honeycutt, I have a copy of something where I think this is where you got it. It does say Bedford County 0.4110, but the final composite index with the reversion, now we have a local composite index of 0.3132.
This is what is in the superintendent's report as far as the quality standards required by the state. This is the information that was presented to the superintendents. That's the source that was pulled. I know, and this is kind of beyond what I've gotten into, that whenever the county and the city merged, there was an arrangement as far as what local composite index would be pulled. I don't know if that has any impact on what you're talking about, but this represents it's calculating the true value of real property, adjusted gross income, taxable retail sales, and represents the school division's ability to pay education costs fundamental to Commonwealth standards of quality. And again, this is what's referenced at the state level for us, so.
This is the sheet from the state level, but they've got a column and then a final column. And
That's
this,
a big difference.
I understand, but to me, I think the arrangement was that you'd be able to take the lowest of the two, is that correct?
And that is.
So, but
That would be-
the actual,
So that is the number we're going by.
that's the number you're working off of.
And that's where the
True,
6
yeah.
million comes from. You can't ignore that $6 million coming from the state.
But the county still has the true the property values are still there in the county, and
Well,
and-
actually, it's not in the respect that it's merged. So even if we had the true value, it would have to be a merged value, and it would be lower because the other number is so much lower. So
Yeah.
so you are using a bad number to compare.
Madam
The-
Chair.
Mr.
Mr. Honeycutt,
Yes, sir.
clearly, I agree with you that we need the dialogue, but you see that when you talk about where the differences come in, for instance, when you present and you take from top 30 year on down, you take that number and use it, and this number has to be used also.
I understand that.
Clearly does. So I just want to point that out.
I understand. At the time of putting this presentation together, that was the number on the superintendent's report. Not the one generated by our superintendent, but one generated by the BDOE. If I could, just kind of move forward, I'll go back home, do a little more research, and send you an email changing the slide if need be. And
Because I
align
suspect
them with
the
it.
result will be completely different.
I'm sure it will, because it is a big chunk, but I have access to the resources I had access to. That was what was on those resources.
I think she pulled it.
And well, I'm gonna go find some more, so. Are we okay to move on? So what are we proposing? Going back to Mr. Martin's comment. The BCA would like the board, this is speaking of the school board, to reinstate teachers on the appropriate pay scale step in line with their years of service. Why is it important, Bedford County employees, accepting the 0.75% increase given in 2011-2012, we haven't received any increase in pay. Cost of living is dramatically increased throughout the years. This is kind of a breakdown of where we fall out as far as any changes in pay over the past years, going back to 2009-2010 school year. You kind of see that, there's been very little change.
Mr. Honeycutt, on the previous slide, you said that except for 0.75% in 11-12, and except you show the 3/4%, because in the second bullet, you talk about the cost of living going up. Well, but then you mentioned that there was a 3% COLA in 13-14 on the next slide.
There was an increase for the VRS
Yeah, but then
that was absorbed by the county.
There was a 3.6 for VRS, and then in 13-14, 2.4 for VRS and 3% COLA.
Correct.
So if you're going to reference the cost of living increases, you should
But
probably
they
count
did
that
not-
percent as a raise. The only raise that I've gotten in the last 10 years has been that COLA. I mean, in the private sector, most raises are COLAs. That's what it is. I mean, unless you change positions, you go to central office or something like that, or you become a vice principal or principal, that typically what happens is unless you change positions within a company, you get a COLA. That's how it is in the private sector.
In education, I've worked in the private sector for 17 years, and I've employed people and given people raises, so I understand what you're saying. Raises that I gave were from merit. Cost of living increases were something that we factored in as to the cost of doing business. So, we can debate that kind of principle, but that is how I view it personally.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm
And you and I
saying
see
since
the data
2008 in the
that-
private sector, and I'm pretty familiar with it across a number of industries, and the bulk of the raises are COLAs.
Madam Chair, I agree with Mr. Sharp on some of that, but let me tell you something about an experienced teacher over a factory worker.
Oh, I don't disagree.
The more experience you have as a teacher, the more valuable you become to that student. So the more valuable you become to that student, student, the better educated that student's gonna be, and the better chance that you're gonna see him improve each year that he's there.
And not to mention, you're talking about people with dual master degrees. You're talking people that are proceeding into doctorates. We're required to pursue higher education to recertify our license. As I said, this isn't a factory job, not to diminish the importance of that work.
I'm talking about engineers with masters and PhDs.
Again, I think you and I see that a little differently. And it's okay, we'll move on from it? All right. As we mentioned before, additional concerns that were expressed by the members in the survey were the future cost of health insurance and VRS contribution requirements. And this, I think that no matter how we stand or who you decide is responsible for the problem, or if there is a problem, I think we all agree that as far as compensating teachers, there is a problem. I think everyone, if we took a straw poll, would agree that teachers are underpaid for the value of the service they provide. The facts are the cost of living continues to rise and dramatically affects the lives of our teachers, staff, and their families. The fact is, and again, I'll provide some more research for this, Ms. Barker, but the VDOE's report shows that Bedford County underfunds education. Therefore, we ask the Board of Supervisors to fund an educational budget that is assembled by the school board, and in that we are trusting that those elected officials are going to make the correct decisions and the right decisions for the children of this county, to provide the best educational opportunities to all students in the county, fund an improvement in teacher and educational staff compensation, and demonstrate that they are as committed to the staff as the staff is to the students that they serve. And I think this is always a disconnect with educators. We're employed by Bedford County School District, which in turn works underneath the government of Bedford County. But we truly do see our responsibility to the students. That is who we work for. I think that we would be ineffective if we approached it any other way. Let's work together to make education a priority in this county. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll start, and then
Okay.
we'll see if anyone else has anything to say. Of all the slides you had, I'd say the best slide that you had, which I would totally agree with, is the BCEA would like the board to reinstate teachers on the appropriate pay scale step in line with their years of service. That's a topic you'll have to take up with the school board and Dr. Sharp.
And we have,
Increases.
and I think their response to us would be, we don't have the funding to do it. That is
Well, I'm gonna tell you
conversation
how,
needs to happen
how you
between.
fix that problem. For reversion, Bedford County School Board got an extra $6.2 million annually. Okay, state funding goes directly to the school board, doesn't come through us to them, it goes directly to the school board. So it's within their purview to spend that money and appropriate that money as they see fit. That's 6.2. They just got finished voting to close 2 elementary schools. I'd always thought that it was, we've been told $1.6 million in savings, but I read in the Bedford paper this past week, Mr. Richard Downey, District 1 school board member, is quoted in here, and this is his commentary. So he wrote this, of saving $2 million. So I don't know if it's $2 million or 1.6, but that's a significant savings by closing 2 schools that they're supposed to receive. Did anyone, when you present your presentation to the school board a couple of weeks ago, did you ask for that money in savings to be prioritized and put back into the classroom through teacher salaries?
We did. We asked that the school board put together a budget, an operating budget that reflected an improvement in compensation, specifically focusing on restoring the pay scales.
Did you specifically ask in that meeting if the savings from the school, the closing of 2 schools, if they would prioritize that money for teacher salaries?
No, I did not specifically ask that particular question.
That-
To me, it's, from where I stand, and I think from where my colleagues stand, it's, should we have to? I mean, we expect our governing bodies to operate